Jack Morrison never expected anything special from that cold Sunday morning. He was just a carpenter and single dad, taking his 8-year-old daughter ice fishing on Lake Minnetonka. Then he saw it, someone thrashing in the freezing water where the ice had cracked. Without thinking, he ran toward the hole in the ice. He didn't know the woman he was about to save was Alexandra Sterling, worth billions. He didn't know pulling her from those icy waters would change his life forever. But here's what everyone wants to know. How do you repay someone who risked everything to save your life? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The old photo album sat on Jack Morrison's workbench, collecting a fine layer of sawdust. He should have put it away properly, but Emma had been looking through it again this morning, as she often did before school. Her small fingerprints marked, the plastic sleeve protecting a photo of Sarah, her mother, taken just months before the diagnosis. Jack ran a calloused hand through his graying hair, brushing away wood shavings as he studied the custom cabinet he'd been working on since dawn. The early morning light filtered through his workshop's windows, highlighting the imperfections he still needed to sand away. At 42, he felt every hour of the previous day's labor in his joints, but there was no time for rest. The Peterson wedding order needed to be finished by Friday, and he was already behind schedule. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez next door. Emma forgot her lunch again. Jack smiled despite himself. 3rd time this month. He grabbed the brown paper bag from the counter and headed for his truck, pausing only to lock up the workshop attached to their modest home. The drive to Riverside Elementary took exactly 7 minutes, as it had every school day for the past 3 years. Emma waited by the front office, her dark hair in the slightly crooked ponytail she'd insisted on doing herself this morning. At 8 years old, she was determined to be as independent as possible. "Sorry, kiddo," Jack said, handing her the lunch bag. "Maybe we should start keeping a spare in your backpack." Emma took the bag, her expression serious beyond her years. "It's okay, Dad. I was looking at Mom's pictures and lost track of time." She hugged him quickly, already turning toward her classroom. "Don't forget, it's breakfast for dinner night." Jack watched her go, her backpack bouncing with each step. Sarah would have been proud of how their daughter had handled everything. The thought came with its familiar ache, but these days it was duller, more bittersweet than sharp pain. Back in his workshop, Jack returned to the cabinet, losing himself. In the rhythm of sanding and measuring, the photo album caught his eye again. Sarah beamed from the cover photo, taken on their wedding day. She'd been so beautiful, so full of life and dreams. They'd had plans, expanding the business, maybe opening a proper showroom downtown. But life had other ideas. His phone rang, jolting him from the memories. The caller ID showed Bill Collections. Jack let it go to voicemail like the 3 other calls this week. Between Emma's orthodontist payments and the workshop's heating bills, things were tight. He'd figure something out. He always did. A notification popped up on his phone's calendar. Ice fishing license, renew. He'd promised Emma they'd go this weekend, just like Sarah used to take her. The expense wasn't ideal right now, but some promises were too important to break. Besides, Emma had been looking forward to it for weeks, carefully checking the weather reports and planning what snacks to bring. The rest of the day passed in a blur of sawdust and measurements. At 6 o'clock sharp, Emma bounded into the workshop, already talking about pancakes and bacon. Jack set aside his tools, knowing the cabinet would have to wait until tomorrow. Some things were more important than work. As they cooked together in their small kitchen, Emma perched on a stool to reach the counter. Jack couldn't help but notice how much she looked like Sarah. The same determined set to her jaw when she concentrated, the same slight furrow between her eyebrows. "Dad," Emma said, carefully flipping a pancake, "do you think Mom would be proud of Booz?" Jack's throat tightened. "Yes, sweetheart, she'd be so proud, especially of your pancake-flipping skills." Emma grinned, the gap where her front tooth was missing making her look even younger. "And of how you're the best dad and make beautiful furniture." "That too," Jack chuckled, though his eyes stung a bit. "Though she'd probably tell me to clean the sawdust off my clothes before dinner." They ate at their small kitchen table. Emma, chattering about her day, the science project she'd aced, the new girl in class who'd shared her cookies at lunch, the upcoming ice fishing trip. Jack listened, asking questions in all the right places, grateful for these simple moments that made everything else worthwhile. After Emma was tucked in bed, Jack returned to the workshop. The photo album was still there, waiting. He opened it carefully, mindful of the sawdust on his hands. Photos told their story. His and Sarah's first date, their tiny wedding the day they bought this house, Emma's birth, family picnics and fishing trips. A life built on love and simple dreams. Tomorrow would bring more bills, more work, more challenges. But for now, in the quiet of his workshop with Sarah's smile watching over him, Jack felt rich in all the ways that truly mattered. Sunday morning arrived with a bitter wind that cut straight through Jack's worn winter jacket. He'd meant to replace it last year, but Emma's growth spurt had meant new winter clothes for her instead. The jacket would hold up fine for another season. "Dad, hurry up," Emma called from ahead, practically bouncing across the frozen surface of Lake Minnetonka. Her new ice fishing license swung from the lanyard around her neck, a bright orange beacon against her purple coat. "Careful, Em. Stay where I can see you." The words came automatically, though he knew she was being careful. She'd grown up on these lakes, just like he had. They found a good spot about 50 yards from shore, away from the cluster of ice fishing houses that dotted the lake's surface. Jack began drilling the hole, while Emma arranged their gear with practiced efficiency. The auger's whine echoed across the ice, harmonizing with distant snowmobiles and children's laughter. "Mom would love this morning," Emma said quietly, adjusting, her hat against the wind. "Remember how she always brought hot chocolate?" Jack smiled, pausing in his work. "In that ridiculous thermos with the penguins on it. I brought it." Emma pulled the battered thermos from her backpack, the faded penguins still dancing across its surface. "Found it in the back of the cupboard." Something caught in Jack's throat. He was about to respond when a sound cut through the morning air. A sharp crack followed by a splash and a scream. Jack's head snapped up. About 100 yards away, a dark figure thrashed in open water where the ice had given way. Without thinking, he dropped the auger. "Emma, call 911. Stay here." He was running before the words finished leaving his mouth, years of experience on the ice guiding his steps. The figure, he could see now it was a woman, struggled to grip the edge of the ice, but it kept breaking away under her weight. "Hold on," he shouted. "I'm coming." 20 yards away now. The woman's movements were becoming slower, more sluggish. Hypothermia would set in fast in these temperatures. Jack dropped to his stomach, spreading his weight across the ice as he'd been taught since childhood. He could hear Emma's voice behind him, clear and steady as she spoke to emergency services. "Good girl. Grab my hands," he called, inching closer to the hole. The woman's face was pale, her dark hair plastered to her head. Her expensive-looking coat was dragging her down, heavy with water. Their eyes met. Hers were starting to look unfocused. Bad sign. "Stay with me," Jack urged, stretching out across the ice. "What's your name?" "Alexandra," she managed through chattering teeth. Her fingers, red and stiff with cold, reached for his. Jack caught her hands. They were surprisingly delicate, in his calloused grip. "Okay, Alexandra, I'm going to pull you out. Work with me." She nodded weakly. Jack began to pull, his muscles straining against her waterlogged weight. The ice creaked ominously beneath them. "Almost there," he encouraged. "Keep your eyes on me." With a final heave, he pulled her clear of the water. They lay on the ice for a moment, both gasping. Alexandra's whole body shook violently. Jack's jacket was off in seconds, wrapped around her trembling shoulders. In the distance, sirens wailed. "The ambulance is coming," Emma called, jogging carefully toward them. "They said to keep her warm and don't let her fall asleep." Jack helped Alexandra sit up, noting how her designer clothes were quickly freezing solid in the bitter air. She tried to speak, but her teeth chattered too hard to form words. Just breathe, he soothed, rubbing her arms through his jacket. Help's almost here. Emma arrived with the thermos. Here, she said, unscrewing the cap with mittened hands. Mum's hot chocolate always helps. A ghost of a smile crossed Alexandra's blue-tinged lips as she accepted the thermos with shaking hands. The sound of emergency vehicles grew closer. My phone, Alexandra managed between sips. In coat. Need to call. Don't worry about that now, Jack said firmly. Just focus on warming up. The first responders arrived in a flurry of activity. As they wrapped Alexandra in emergency blankets and helped her onto a stretcher, a black SUV came screaming into the parking lot. Men in suits jumped out, running toward them. Miss Sterling! One called out. Thank God! Jack felt Emma press against his side as more vehicles arrived. Police, news vans, more black SUVs. Alexandra was being loaded into an ambulance, his old jacket still around her shoulders. Sir, one of the suited men approached them. I'm Miss Sterling's head of security. She's the daughter of Dad, Emma whispered, tugging at his sleeve and pointing to her phone. She'd been looking up the name. On the screen was a photo of Alexandra Sterling, looking polished and professional, next to a headline about the Sterling technology empire and its billions in assets. Jack stared at the image, then at his jacket disappearing into the ambulance. A worn carpenter's coat now wrapped around one of the wealthiest women in the country. The morning suddenly felt even colder. The emergency room buzzed with barely contained chaos. Jack sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, his damp clothes finally starting to dry, while Emma dozed against his shoulder. His wrist itched beneath the hospital bracelet they'd insisted. He wear after checking him for hypothermia, a precaution, they'd said, though he felt fine. Mr. Morrison? A nurse approached with a steaming cup of coffee. Miss Sterling is asking to see you. Jack glanced at Emma, but the nurse smiled. The children's ward volunteer can sit with her. Miss Sterling was quite insistent. After making sure Emma was comfortable with the friendly volunteer, Jack followed the nurse through stark white corridors. News vans were still visible through the windows, their satellite dishes stretching skyward like metal flowers. Alexandra's private room looked more like a hotel suite than a hospital room. She sat propped up in bed, her dark hair dried and smoothed, some color returned to her cheeks. An IV drip hung beside her, but otherwise she seemed remarkably recovered. Jack's jacket lay neatly folded on a nearby chair. My hero, she said with a slight smile, her voice stronger than it had been on the ice. Please come in and close the door. It'll keep the hovering security detail at bay for a few minutes at least. Jack stepped inside, suddenly aware of his rumpled appearance. How are you feeling? Warmer, she said, gesturing for him to take a seat. Though I'm told that's largely thanks to you. The doctor said another minute in that water. She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. I understand I have your daughter to thank as well. She's the one who called 911. Emma, Jack nodded. She kept her head. Her mother would have been proud. Would have been? Alexandra caught the past tense immediately, her eyes softening with understanding. Cancer 3 years ago. I'm so sorry. The words were simple but genuine, free from the awkward pity Jack had grown used to hearing. And thank you for the hot chocolate. It helped more than the warming blankets, if I'm honest. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the steady beep of medical monitors. Through the window, Jack could see more media arriving, held back by hospital security and Alexandra's own formidable protection detail. There, going to want a story, Alexandra said, following his gaze. The press. My father's PR team is probably drafting statements already. She turned back to Jack, her expression concerned. I hope you're ready for that. I'm afraid your quiet life might get a little complicated for a while. Jack shifted uncomfortably. Miss Sterling. Alexandra, please. I think pulling someone from a frozen lake puts us on a first-name basis. Alexandra, you don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done exactly what you did. She raised an eyebrow. No, they wouldn't have. I saw all those other people on the lake. You were the only one who ran toward the danger instead of away from it. She leaned forward, wincing slightly. "And now I'd like to help you, if you'll let me." Before Jack could protest, the door opened. A distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit strode in, flanked by two others in more subtle attire. "Alexandra, darling, what were you thinking, hiking alone on that lake? Do you have any idea what could have happened?" The man's voice carried the weight of authority and old money. "The board meeting is in 3 days, and now we'll have to manage this media circus instead of focusing on the merger. Hello to you too, Father," Alexandra said dryly. "I'm fine, thank you for asking. And this is Jack Morrison, the man who saved my life." Richard Sterling turned, seeming to notice Jack for the first time. His assessment was quick and dismissive. "Yes, of course. The PR team will handle everything. Standard Good Samaritan compensation package, confidentiality agreements." "Father." Alexandra's voice cut through the room like steel. "Mr. Morrison didn't save me for a compensation package, and I'll handle this my way." The tension in the room thickened. Jack stood, recognizing his cue to leave. "I should check on Emma." "Of course," Alexandra said warmly, ignoring her father's frown. "But please don't leave the hospital yet. I'd like to speak with you again if you're willing, and I still have your jacket." Jack nodded, making his way past the imposing figures. At the door, as he left, he heard Richard Sterling's controlled voice. "Really, Alexandra, we need to discuss your habit of turning everything into a crusade." Emma was awake when he returned, showing the volunteer pictures of Sarah on her phone. She looked up as Jack approached. "Is the lady okay?" "She's fine, kiddo, just fine." Jack sank into the chair beside her, his mind spinning with the morning's events. "Dad?" Emma's voice was hesitant. "I looked her up some more. She's really important, like really important. Are we in trouble?" Jack pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. "No, sweetheart, we're not in trouble. We just helped someone who needed help. That's what your mom would have done, right?" Emma nodded against his shoulder. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their simple life was about to become anything but simple. The business card appeared simple at first glance. Cream-colored heavyweight stock with Alexandra Sterling embossed in elegant serif font. But when Jack turned it over in his workshop 3 days after the rescue, he noticed the handwritten note on the back. "Some things can't be repaid, but perhaps we can help each other. Call me, A." He set it beside the morning's newspaper, where their story dominated the local section. The photo showed him helping Alexandra from the ice, his old jacket dark with lake water. The headline read, "Local Carpenter Saves Tech Heiress." Below that, a smaller headline, "Sterling Technologies Announces Major Community Investment Initiative." His phone buzzed again. Another potential client. Since the rescue, his voicemail had been flooded with messages. Everyone, it seemed, suddenly wanted custom furniture from that heroic carpenter. "Dad," Emma called from the house, "Channel 5 is here again." Jack sighed, running a hand through his hair. The media attention was becoming overwhelming. Yesterday, a reporter had tried to interview Emma at school, leading to a stern call from the principal about security protocols. The workshop door opened, and Emma slipped inside. "I told them you were busy, like you said to." She hopped onto her favorite stool, the one Jack had made for her last birthday. "Are you going to call her?" "Who?" Emma rolled her eyes in that particular way only 8-year-olds could master. "Miss Sterling, I saw the card." She picked it up, tracing the embossed letters. "She was nice, and she liked Mom's hot chocolate." Before Jack could respond, his phone rang, an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Jack Morrison." "Mr. Morrison." Alexandra's voice was warm, professional. "I hope I'm not interrupting your work." "No, I was just—" He glanced at the unfinished cabinet, weeks behind schedule now. "Actually, yes, but it's fine." She laughed softly. "Direct, I like that. Listen, I have a proposition for you. Would you and Emma join me for lunch? Somewhere quiet, away from cameras?" Jack looked at Emma, who was pretending not to eavesdrop, while practically vibrating with curiosity. "I don't know if—" "Please, I promise no PR teams, no reporters, no agenda except good food and conversation." There's a small cafe on Cedar Street, Murphy's, family-owned, very discreet. Say, 1 o'clock? Emma was nodding vigorously, though she couldn't possibly hear Alexandra's side of the conversation. All right, Jack found himself saying. 1 o'clock. Murphy's cafe turned out to be exactly as Alexandra described. A cozy, unpretentious place with worn wooden tables and the smell of fresh bread. The owner, a grey-haired woman who introduced herself as Mary, led them to a private back room, where Alexandra already waited. She stood as they entered, dressed more casually than at the hospital, but still elegant. "Thank you for coming," she smiled at Emma. "I heard you handled those reporters like a pro yesterday." Emma beamed, sliding into the booth. "Dad taught me to be polite but firm." "Smart man, your father." Alexandra's eyes met Jack's. "Please sit. I ordered hot chocolate for everyone. Different penguins, but hopefully just as good." Over soup and sandwiches, Alexandra finally revealed her proposition. "I want to invest in your business, Jack. No strings, no public relations angle. Simply capital to expand your workshop, hire help, take on more orders." "Ms. Sterling, Alexandra." "Alexandra, I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept." "Why not?" She leaned forward. "Your work is exceptional. I've done my research. Every piece is handcrafted, unique. There's a 6-month waiting list for your furniture, and that was before all this publicity. You have a real talent, but you're limited by resources. I've managed fine so far." "Have you?" Her voice was gentle. "Those hospital bills from your wife's treatment, they're not fully paid, are they? And Emma's orthodontist, the workshop repairs you've been postponing." Jack stiffened. "You looked into my finances?" "I looked into a potential business investment. That's what this is, Jack. Not charity, not repayment. An investment in craftsmanship I believe in." Emma, who had been quietly eating her sandwich, spoke up. "Mum always said Dad's furniture was special, that someday everyone would know it." Alexandra smiled at her. "Your mum sounds very wise." She pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. "Just look at the proposal. Take your time, but don't say no just because accepting help feels like failure. Sometimes it's the strongest thing we can do." Jack opened the folder. Inside was a detailed business plan, along with architectural drawings for an expanded workshop. His throat tightened at the thought of what Sarah would say. Her dream for his work, finally within reach. "Think about it," Alexandra said softly. She stood, leaving her card on top of the folder. "For what it's worth, I don't usually take no for an answer." She squeezed Emma's shoulder as she passed. "Take care of your dad for me." After she left, Emma picked up the business card, studying it thoughtfully. "Dad, sometimes helping someone isn't just about saving them from frozen lakes." Jack looked at his daughter, so much like her mother, seeing straight to the heart of things. The folder sat heavy with possibility before him, Alexandra's card a bridge between his world and hers. The local newspaper spread across Jack's workbench, coffee rings staining its edges. "Local heroes' craftsmanship captures national attention," the headline declared, accompanied by a photo of his latest piece, a hand-carved dining table that had somehow caught the eye of a home design magazine. "You've got 3 more calls about custom orders," Mrs. Rodriguez announced, poking her head into the workshop. She'd started helping with the phones last week, when the constant ringing became too much to handle alone, and that nice reporter from Home & Style wants to reschedule the photo shoot. Jack nodded absently, focused on the delicate scrollwork he was carving. His hands moved with practiced precision, though his mind wandered to the folder still sitting. In his desk drawer, Alexandra's proposal, unmarked but not forgotten. "Dad!" Emma burst through the door, waving a paper. "Look what we learned about in school today." She thrust the article at him, a feature about Sterling Technologies' new community development program, with Alexandra's photo prominently displayed. "Ms. Sterling's company is helping rebuild the old community center. Can we go see it?" Before Jack could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from Alexandra herself. "Dinner tonight? Emma mentioned you make excellent spaghetti. I'll bring dessert. No business talk, I promise." The past 2 weeks had settled into a strange new rhythm. His once quiet workshop now hummed with activity. The viral video of the rescue had led to unexpected fame for his furniture business. People seemed captivated by the story of the craftsman, who saved a billionaire heiress, and orders poured in faster than he could fulfill them. "Your mother would be laughing right now," he muttered to himself, running a hand over the smooth wood. All this attention for doing what anyone would have done. But Alexandra had been right about one thing. The publicity had revealed how many people appreciated true craftsmanship. His waiting list had grown to 8 months, and he'd had to start turning down orders. The irony wasn't lost on him, finally having more work than he could handle, but lacking the resources to expand. He glanced at Emma's school article again. Alexandra's face smiled up at him, professional but with that hint of warmth he'd come to recognize. She'd been subtle in her help, never pushing, but her influence was everywhere. A magazine feature here, a business connection there, all while respecting his privacy and pride. "There's a Mr. Chen on line 2, Mrs. Rodriguez called out. "Something about commissioning a full dining room set?" Jack picked up his phone, thumbs hovering over Alexandra's text. Emma watched him expectantly, still clutching the article. "Dad, can we say yes to dinner?" She bit her lip. "I kind of already told my friends Miss Sterling was coming over." "Did you now?" Jack raised an eyebrow, but couldn't help smiling. "And what made you so sure I'd agree?" Emma shrugged, looking remarkably like Sarah in that moment. "Because she makes you smile like Mom's pictures do. Not sad happy, just happy happy." The observation hit him like a physical touch. Leave it to an 8-year-old to see right through him. He typed a quick reply. "Dinner at 6. Bring your appetite and leave your checkbook at home." The response came immediately. "Wouldn't dream of mixing business with your famous spaghetti. See you both at 6. I said, "No." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of sawdust and phone calls. Jack found himself watching the clock more often than usual, aware of the need to clean up both workshop and house before their guest arrived. It had been a long time since they'd hosted anyone for dinner. As he was closing up the workshop, a delivery truck pulled up. The driver carried a large flat box with a familiar logo, the same high-end bakery Sarah used to dream about ordering from for special occasions. "Delivery for Morrison residents," the driver announced, "from Ms. Sterling." Inside was a tiramisu that probably cost more than Jack's weekly grocery budget, with a note in Alexandra's elegant handwriting. "A sweet ending to match your savory beginning. No arguments. Dessert is non-negotiable. A." Jack stood in his workshop, holding Alexandra's note, surrounded by the evidence of how much his life had changed in 2 short weeks. The steady hum of new machines she'd somehow arranged to be tested in his workshop. The stack of business cards he'd finally ordered at Emma's insistence. The growing pile of orders from clients who'd never heard of him before the rescue. Change was coming, whether he was ready or not. The question was no longer if he would accept Alexandra's help, but how to do it without losing himself in the process. "Dad," Emma called from the house, "we need to start the sauce if it's going to be ready by 6. Jack tucked Alexandra's note into his pocket, right next to her business card. "Coming, kiddo." He took one last look at his workshop, his father's. Tools hanging beside modern equipment, old dreams meeting new opportunities. Sarah would have loved this, he realized. Not just the success, but the way it had come from an act of simple human kindness. Maybe accepting help wasn't surrendering. After all, maybe it was just opening another door. The dinner menu sat beside Jack's plate like a foreign object. Heavy, cream-colored cardstock with elegant script listing dishes he could barely pronounce. Emma, seated next to him in a new dress they'd bought for the occasion, whispered, "Dad, why are there so many forks?" Jack wished he had an answer. The Sterling estate dining room could have fit his entire house inside it. Crystal chandeliers casting warm light over the mahogany table that stretched nearly the length of the room. A table that, he couldn't help but notice, needed restoration. The kind of work he usually did for middle-class families, saving up for an heirloom piece. Start from the outside and work your way in, Alexandra's voice carried from the doorway. She walked in wearing a simple black dress that probably cost more than his truck, but her smile was the same warm one she'd worn in his kitchen over spaghetti last week. And don't worry, I still get confused sometimes. This place is like a castle, Emma breathed, eyes wide as she took in the oil paintings and tapestries adorning the walls. A rather cold one most days, Alexandra said, taking her seat across from them, but better with company. The first course arrived, carried by staff wearing crisp uniforms. Jack recognized the maître d' as James, who had picked them up in a luxury car that afternoon. The man had been kind, showing Emma how the car's entertainment system worked, while carefully avoiding any mention of its price tag. The chef prepared something special, Alexandra explained as delicate bowls were set before them. She remembered Emma mentioning her mother's butternut squash soup. Jack's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. Emma took a careful sip, then broke into a wide smile. "Dad, it tastes just like Mom's. I hope you don't mind," Alexandra said softly. "Emma shared the recipe during our hot chocolate date last week. I thought, well, sometimes familiar tastes feel like home, even in unfamiliar places." Before Jack could respond, the dining room doors opened again. Richard Sterling strode in, followed by an elegant woman who could only be Alexandra's mother. "I wasn't aware we were having guests," Richard said, his tone suggesting he was very aware indeed. "Dad, Mother, you remember Jack and Emma Morrison?" Alexandra's voice remained pleasant, but took on a slight edge. "I told you they were joining us tonight." "Yes." "Well," Richard adjusted his cufflinks. A nervous tell, Jack realized. "I assume that was another of your charitable projects." "Mr. Morrison," Alexandra's mother stepped forward, smoothly cutting through the tension. "I'm Victoria Sterling. Thank you for what you did for our daughter. Please don't let us interrupt your dinner. We were just leaving for the symphony." But Richard hadn't moved. He stood studying Jack with the same expression he probably used in corporate takeovers. "I understand you're a carpenter." "Yes, sir. Custom furniture and restorations." "Restorations?" Richard's eyebrow lifted slightly as he glanced at the dining table. Alexandra jumped in. "Dad's actually one of the most sought-after craftsmen in the region now. His waiting list is nearly a year long." 8 months, Jack corrected quietly. 9 as of this morning, Alexandra countered with a small smile. "I saw the new orders." Emma, who had been following the conversation like a tennis match, suddenly spoke up. "Dad could fix your table. Mr. Sterling, he makes old things beautiful again. Mom always said he had magic in his hands." The simple honesty of her words seemed to shift something in the room. Victoria's practiced smile softened into something more genuine, even Richard's. Posture relaxed slightly. "Did she?" Victoria asked gently. "Tell me more about your mother, Emma." And just like that, dinner transformed. Emma chatted about Sarah, about helping in Jack's workshop, about the time they'd restored an old rocking chair for Mrs. Rodriguez. Alexandra shared stories about learning to sail with her father, back before Sterling Technologies became a corporate giant. Victoria revealed that she'd once dreamed of being a concert pianist. Only Richard remained somewhat apart, though Jack caught him studying the table's worn edges with new interest. As dessert was served, a chocolate creation that made Emma's eyes go wide, Alexandra raised her glass. "To new friends and old memories. And to good soup," Emma added solemnly, making everyone laugh. Later, as they toured the grounds at Emma's insistence, Jack found himself walking beside Alexandra. In the estate's garden, Emma ran ahead with James, who was showing her the koi pond. "I'm sorry about my father," Alexandra said quietly. "He's set in his ways." "He loves you," Jack replied, "wants to protect you. I understand that, the way you protect Emma." She stopped, turning to face him. "You know, watching you with her, it reminds me of what I wished for growing up. All this," she gestured at the mansion behind them, "but what I really wanted was someone to share soup recipes with. The fairy." Lights strung through the garden trees cast a soft glow on her face. For a moment Jack saw past the billionaire heiress to the woman who'd sat in his kitchen trading stories with his daughter. "Dad," Emma called out, "they have baby fish, hundreds of them." "Go!" Alexandra laughed, "before she tries to bring one home in her pocket." As Jack walked toward the pond, he heard Victoria's voice drift from an open window above. "Richard, darling, when was the last time you heard Alexandra laugh like that?" The menu card from dinner was still in his pocket, no longer feeling quite so foreign. Tomorrow he'd go back to his workshop, to sawdust and orders and the simple life he knew. But something had shifted, like two pieces of wood grain finally finding their matching pattern. Late into the night, Jack's workshop lights burned bright as he worked on a special project. The wooden box taking shape under his hands was crafted from reclaimed maple he'd been saving for something important. Its surface caught the lamplight, grain patterns flowing like frozen waves, a deliberate choice that made him smile. "Is it for Miss Sterling?" Emma asked from her perch on her stool, fighting sleep but determined to stay up. She'd been watching him work on the box for the past week, offering suggestions about the design. "How'd you guess?" Jack carefully fitted the hidden compartment mechanism, a feature inspired by an antique writing desk he'd restored last year. "Because you keep making that face," Emma yawned. "The one Mom said you made when you were making her jewelry box." Jack's hands stilled on the wood. Sarah had treasured that box, using it to store the few pieces of jewelry she'd owned. Mostly handmade things he'd given her over the years. After she passed, Emma had claimed it for her own treasures. "What face is that?" he asked, though he had a feeling he knew. "Like you're trying to put feelings into the wood." A knock at the workshop door interrupted his response. Alexandra stood in the doorway, still in her business suit from the office, but looking somehow softer in the workshop's warm lighting. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "I was driving by, saw the lights." "Miss Sterling!" Emma perked up despite her tiredness. "Dad's making you a—" "Time for bed, kiddo," Jack cut in quickly. "It's way past your bedtime." Emma gave him a knowing look, but slid off her stool. "Good night, Miss Sterling. Don't let—" "Dad worked too late. He forgets to sleep when he's making special things." After Emma left, Alexandra stepped into the workshop, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. She moved carefully around the equipment, taking in the organized chaos of Jack's creative space. "Special things?" she asked, eyebrow raised. Jack quickly covered the box with a cloth. "Just a project." She smiled but didn't press. Instead, she picked up a small wood shaving, running it through her fingers. "I had 3 merger meetings today. 8 hours of lawyers and accountants arguing over decimal points, and all I could think about was your workshop. The smell of wood, the quiet focus, the way everything here has a purpose. Not very exciting compared to billion-dollar deals. You'd be surprised." She set down her designer bag, looking suddenly vulnerable. "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" Jack nodded, recognizing the need in her voice. "I hate it, all of it. The meetings, the politics, the constant pressure to be the Sterling heiress." She ran a hand along a rough-hewn beam. "I always wanted to create something real. Something I could touch, that would last. Father says I'm being romantic, that moving money and managing acquisitions is how you build a legacy. What do you think?" "I think legacy isn't always what we're told it should be." She met his eyes. "That's why I want to help you expand your business. Not because I feel obligated, but because what you create here, it's real. It matters." Jack looked at the covered box, then back at Alexandra. Slowly, he pulled the cloth away. "It's not finished yet." She stepped closer, examining the box with genuine appreciation. Her fingers traced the wave-like grain patterns. "It's beautiful. It's yours. Or it will be, once it's done." He demonstrated the hidden compartment. "Mechanism. For your real treasures, not the ones they make you wear to board meetings." Alexandra's eyes glistened in the workshop lights. "Jack, you saved my business," he said quietly. "Not just with money or connections. You believed in it. In me. This is, well, it's thank you. And it's, I believe in you, too." She touched the box again, this time finding the small inscription he'd carved inside the lid. For A. Some treasures can't be measured. The wood, she said softly. It looks like the lake where we met. I've been saving this piece, waiting for the right project. Alexandra looked up at him, really looked at him, and in that moment, the distance between their worlds seemed to vanish. She wasn't the Sterling heiress, and he wasn't the carpenter who saved her. They were just two people who understood something about creating lasting things. Will you teach me? She asked suddenly. Just the basics, how to sand, how to feel the grain. Jack found himself smiling. Now, in that suit, I have a change of clothes in the car. Board meetings require backup. Plans. She was already shrugging off her jacket. Unless you're too tired. Emma says I forget to sleep anyway when I'm working on special things. They worked into the night. Alexandra's designer clothes replaced by borrowed coveralls. Her elegant updo coming loose as she learned to guide the sanding block with the grain. Jack taught her how to feel the wood's story and its patterns, how to listen to what it wanted to become. And if their hands brushed more often than strictly necessary, if their laughter carried through the quiet workshop more freely than either expected, well, some treasures really couldn't be measured. The glossy tabloid magazine lay on Jack's workbench like an unwelcome guest. Sterling Heiress's Romantic Rescue. Inside Alexandra's blue-collar love story screamed the headline, accompanied by paparazzi photos of their dinner outings, workshop visits, and, most troublingly, Alexandra picking Emma up from school last week. Ms. Peterson pulled me aside today, Emma said quietly from the doorway. She'd come straight to the workshop after school, still wearing her backpack. Some kids were saying stuff about you and Ms. Sterling, about us. Jack's jaw tightened. They'd been naive to think they could keep their growing friendship private. 3 months after the rescue, the media's interest hadn't waned. It had evolved, turning their story into something both more and less than what it was. His phone buzzed. Alexandra's father. Again. He'd been calling all morning ever since the magazine hit newsstands. Jack let it go to voicemail like the others. What kind of stuff? He asked Emma, though he could guess. That we're only pretending. To be nice to get Miss Sterling's money. That you're trying to, she hesitated, marry rich to solve our problems. Her voice got smaller. They said Mom would be ashamed. The chisel in Jack's hand creaked under his grip. Come here, kiddo. Emma crawled into his lap like she used to when she was smaller, before she decided 8 was too old for such things. He held her close, smelling the familiar mix of school cafeteria and the coconut shampoo Sarah had always used. Your mom would be proud of us, he said firmly. We're not pretending anything. Alexandra is our friend because of who she is, not what she has. I know, Emma sniffled. I told them that. Then I said at least Ms. Sterling knows how to properly measure wood grain, which shut them up because they had no idea what that meant. Jack couldn't help chuckling. The memory of Alexandra's determined face as she learned woodworking basics during their late-night sessions was one he treasured. His phone buzzed again. Alexandra this time. He answered immediately. Jack, I'm so sorry. She sounded tired, stressed. Father's lawyers are drafting cease and desist letters, but these tabloids, they don't care about truth. How are you holding up? Oh, you know. Just another day of being called a naive socialite, slumming it with her working-class hero. Her attempt at lightness fell flat. The board members are concerned about image issues. Father's arranging a press conference to clarify the nature of our association. Jack's stomach tightened. Alexandra, I won't let them dictate my life, Jack. Or my friendships. Steel entered her voice. But maybe we should be more careful. For Emma's sake. As if summoned by her name, Emma grabbed the phone. Miss Sterling, are you still coming to my science fair tomorrow? There was a pause. Then Alexandra's voice softened. Wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart. I want to see if our hypothesis about sustainable wood harvesting held up. After the call ended, Emma stayed in Jack's lap, playing with the wood. Shaving. Dad, do we have to stop being friends with Miss Sterling? No, kiddo. Real friendship doesn't work that way. Good, because she reached into her backpack, pulling out a slightly crumpled piece of paper. I kind of already put her down as my second emergency contact at school. Miss Peterson said we needed to update the form and, well, she's the only one besides Mrs. Rodriguez who knows about my inhaler and my peanut allergy and... Jack stared. At the form, Alexandra's name written in Emma's careful handwriting right below his own. When had that happened? When had the Sterling heiress become so woven into their lives that his 8-year-old considered her emergency contact material? His phone buzzed yet again, this time a text from Alexandra. "Turn on Channel 5, now." He reached for the small TV in the corner of his workshop, the one that usually played old movies while he worked. Richard Sterling's face filled the screen, standing at a podium. While we appreciate Mr. Morrison's heroic actions, any speculation about a romantic relationship between my daughter and him is not only false, but potentially damaging to both parties. Sterling Technologies has a long history of supporting small businesses. Emma's hand found his. He's wrong, isn't he? About you and Ms. Sterling? Jack watched Richard Sterling try to reduce 3 months of coffee talks, workshop lessons, and shared laughter into a simple business arrangement. But all he could think about was Alexandra's face when she'd finally got the sanding technique right. How she'd looked up at him with sawdust in her hair and pure joy in her eyes. "Yeah, kiddo," he said quietly. "He's wrong." The angry email from Richard Sterling glowed on Jack's computer screen, its formal language barely masking the threat beneath. "Mr. Morrison, your continued association with my daughter has become increasingly problematic for both Sterling Technologies and Alexandra's position within the company. While we appreciate your past actions, the board cannot ignore the impact of these rumors on our stock price and pending merger negotiations. I trust you understand that Alexandra's responsibilities to the company must take precedence over any personal entanglements. A generous compensation package, including expanded business support, awaits your cooperation in distancing yourself from this situation. I'm certain we can count on your discretion. Regards, Richard Sterling, CEO, Sterling Technologies." Jack closed his laptop harder than necessary, the sound echoing through his empty workshop. It was past midnight, but sleep felt impossible. Alexandra had left 7 messages since the science fair, where he'd deliberately kept his distance. Each one hurt more than the last. The latest one played in his mind. "Jack, please, don't do this. Don't let them win." But it wasn't about winning anymore. Earlier that day, he'd been called to Emma's school again. This time, she'd gotten into a fight defending Alexandra's honor against some 6th grader's cruel remarks. His 8-year-old daughter coming home with a split lip because the world couldn't leave well enough alone. His phone lit up. "Mrs. Rodriguez texting, Channel 7 news van outside again. Want me to run interference?" Before he could reply, another message appeared, this one from Alexandra. "Father's threatening to withdraw support from the community center project. Says it's financially unsound. We both know that's not the real reason. Let me fight this. Jack, please." He picked up a piece of sandpaper, mindlessly smoothing the edges of Alexandra's box. He'd meant to give it to her at the science fair, but now it sat unfinished, like everything else between them. A small voice came from the workshop door. "Dad?" Emma stood there in her pajamas, clutching Sarah's old photo album. "I couldn't sleep. Come here, sweetheart." He set aside the sandpaper, making room for her on his workbench stool. "What's on your mind?" She opened the album to a specific page, Sarah's last Christmas, when she'd been too weak to get out of bed. But in the photo, she was smiling, surrounded by handmade ornaments Jack and Emma had crafted for her room. "Mom said something that day," Emma said quietly. "Remember, when you didn't want to put up decorations because you thought it would make her sad?" Jack remembered. Sarah had been so angry with him in her gentle way. "She said," Emma continued, tracing the photo with her finger, "love isn't about protecting people from pain. It's about being there through it. Emma, you're doing It again, Dad, trying to protect everyone by pushing them away. She looked up at him with Sarah's eyes. Miss Sterling makes you happy. She makes us both happy. Why isn't that enough? Jack stared at the photo, at Sarah's knowing smile. She would have loved Alexandra, he realized. Would have seen right through the heiress facade to the woman who taught their daughter about sustainable forestry and snuck extra cookies into her lunch bag. His phone buzzed again. Alexandra sending a photo this time. It was from the science affair. Emma proudly showing off her project about responsible lumber sourcing, Alexandra beaming beside her, both covered in wood shavings from their research. The caption read, "Some things are worth fighting for, even if it's hard, even if it scares us." Dad, Emma's voice was small but determined, remember what Mom always said about your furniture, that every piece tells a story? He nodded, unable to speak. Well, maybe our story isn't finished yet. Maybe it's just stuck in a rough spot that needs more sanding. Jack pulled his daughter close, breathing in the coconut shampoo smell that now reminded him of both Sarah and Alexandra. Past and present, loss and possibility. His phone lit up one final time. A simple message from Alexandra. I miss you both. Emma reached over and picked up the unfinished box. You should finish it, Dad. Mom would want you to. Jack looked at his daughter, so wise, so much like her mother, and made a decision. He couldn't protect her from life's complications by hiding from them. Sarah had taught him that. Maybe it was time to remember the lesson. He picked up his phone, started typing. Got time for a late-night woodworking lesson. Emma's smile was answer enough. The bank statement wasn't meant for Jack's eyes. It had fallen from Alexandra's bag during their midnight woodworking session, mixed in with her notes on wood grain patterns. But once he saw the foundation's name, Sarah's second chance, he couldn't look away. That wasn't supposed to be how you found out, Alexandra said softly. She stood in her now familiar workshop coveralls, sawdust catching in her loose hair. I was going to tell you once everything was established. Jack stared at the document. Monthly donations to cancer research, support for single-parent families, educational funds for children who'd lost parents. All under a foundation named for his late wife. How long? His voice caught. How long have you been doing this? Since the day after the rescue. Alexandra sat beside him on the workbench. When I looked you up, trying to find a way to thank you, I found Sarah's obituary. It mentioned in lieu of flowers, donations to cancer research. She brushed sawdust from her sleeve. It seemed right, but this is millions. Money I inherited from my grandmother. She was different from my parents, believed wealth was a responsibility, not a privilege. Alexandra's eyes grew distant. She died when I was 12. Cancer too. Emma's voice came from the workshop door. Is that why you knew about my inhaler? And my allergy medicine? They turned to find her in her pajamas again, apparently making late-night workshop visits a habit. Alexandra nodded. My grandmother had asthma. I used to help her with her medications. She patted the workbench beside her, and Emma climbed up between them. She taught me that having money didn't make you special. Using it to help others did. But your father, Jack began, believes image is everything. Success is everything. Alexandra's laugh held no humor. You know what I was doing the day I fell through the ice? Running away from another setup with some CEO's son. Father had arranged the whole thing, merger potential, he called it. She pulled something from her coverall pocket, an old, creased photograph. In it, a young Alexandra sat at a workbench beside an elderly woman, both focused on carving a small wooden bird. Grandmother's workshop, Alexandra explained. She loved creating things with her hands, said it kept her honest. She handed the photo to Emma. Father sold everything after she died. Said it wasn't proper for a Sterling to do manual labor. That's why you wanted to learn woodworking, Jack realized. Alexandra nodded. Every time I'm here working with my hands, I feel close to her again. Just like Emma with Sarah's photo album. Emma studied the photo carefully. Is that why you started the foundation, to be like your grandmother? Partly. Alexandra took Jack's hand, her calluses now matching his. But also because I saw how your dad gives everything to make your life better. It reminded me of her, how true wealth isn't in bank accounts. Jack looked at their joined hands, then at the bank statement, showing Alexandra's quiet generosity. All this time, he'd been worried about their different worlds, about what people would think. Meanwhile, she'd been honoring Sarah's memory, helping families like theirs, finding her way back to her grandmother's values. Dad, Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Remember when Mom said we should judge people by their hearts, not their houses? Jack smiled despite the tears threatening. Yeah, kiddo, I remember. Well, Emma continued, practical as always. Miss Sterling has a really big house, but she has an even bigger heart, and she knows about my inhaler. Alexandra laughed softly, but her eyes shone. High praise indeed. Jack picked up the bank statement again, seeing it differently now, not as charity or obligation, but as proof that some people, no matter their circumstances, chose to make the world better in whatever way they could. Your grandmother would be proud, he said quietly. So would Sarah, Alexandra replied, squeezing his hand. They sat together in the sawdust-filled air, three people bound by loss and love, and the simple truth that family isn't about where you come from, but who you choose to become. Emma picked up a piece of sandpaper. Since we're all awake, can we work on the box? Jack and Alexandra exchanged glances, sharing a smile that held both understanding and promise. First, Alexandra said, reaching for her notes, let's see if you remember what grain pattern goes best with hidden compartments. And in that moment, surrounded by tools and sawdust and love, wealth had nothing to do with bank statements at all. The public statement appeared first on Sterling Technologies' official website, then spread like wildfire across social media. Alexandra had chosen to bypass traditional press releases, speaking directly to the world, to the board of Sterling Technologies, our shareholders, and most importantly, to the public who deserves the truth. 3 months ago, I fell through the ice on Lake Minnetonka. A carpenter named Jack Morrison saved my life. What the media doesn't report is how he and his daughter Emma also saved something else. My faith in genuine human connection. Yes, I've invested in Morrison custom furniture, not out of obligation, but because Jack Morrison's craftsmanship deserves recognition. And yes, I've spent time with his family, not for publicity, but because some people remind you of who you really are. To those concerned about Sterling Technologies' image, true leadership isn't about maintaining appearances. It's about standing up for what you believe in. My grandmother taught me that. Jack and Emma Morrison remind me of it every day. I am Alexandra Sterling, and I choose to be judged by the authenticity of my relationships, not the size of my bank account. For those who understand this, thank you. For those who don't, I invite you to visit Morrison Custom Furniture and see for yourself what real value looks like. Jack read the statement for the 10th time, still processing its implications. His workshop had been flooded with visitors all morning, some genuine customers, others just curious. Emma sat at her usual spot, proudly showing people her science. Fair project about sustainable wood sourcing. Did you see the stock price? Mrs. Rodriguez bustled in, waving her tablet. Sterling Technologies is up 12 points. Turns out people like honest executives. Before Jack could respond, his phone rang, Alexandra's ringtone. Hey, he answered softly. Hey yourself. She sounded tired but resolute. Father's having kittens in the boardroom. Says I've lost my mind. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Her voice strengthened. For my grandmother, for Emma, for us. A pause. Are you angry? Jack watched Emma demonstrating proper wood grain assessment to an impressed-looking couple. No. Scared for you, maybe. Don't be. The board can't touch me. I own too many shares. And the public response? She chuckled. Turns out people love a good billionaire learns true values story, especially when it's actually true. The workshop door opened again, and Richard Sterling himself walked in. Emma straightened on her stool, chin lifting in a gesture so like Alexandra it made Jack's heart twist. "Mr. Morrison." Richard's voice was clipped but not hostile. "My daughter is stubborn, like her grandmother?" Jack suggested mildly. Something flickered in Richard's eyes. "Yes. Well," he ran a finger along a nearly finished table, examining the craftsmanship. "This is excellent work. Dad did the main structure," Emma piped up, "but Miss Sterling helped with the inlay design. She's really good at seeing how patterns flow." Richard studied his granddaughter's photo on the wall, the one of her at the workbench. "She used to spend hours in that workshop. I thought I was protecting her, steering her toward a proper future." "Sometimes," Jack said quietly, "we have to let people choose their own path." The door chimed again. Alexandra walked in, still in her business suit from the board meeting. She stopped short at the sight of her father. "Daddy!" The childhood name seemed to hit Richard like a physical blow. He turned, really looking at his daughter, not the Sterling heiress, but the girl who used to carve wooden birds with her grandmother. "Your statement," he began, "was the truth," she finished. "Everything I said, everything I feel." She moved to stand beside Jack. "I won't apologize for choosing happiness." Richard looked between them, then at Emma, who watched the scene with wise eyes. Finally, he sighed. "Your grandmother would say I've been a fool." "Yes?" Alexandra smiled slightly. "She would." "Well," Richard straightened his tie. Perhaps we could discuss a proper investment strategy for the business, if Mr. Morrison is amenable." Jack felt Alexandra's hand slip into his. "We can discuss it," he said. "Over dinner, maybe. Emma's been wanting to show you her science fair project." "I got an A," Emma added helpfully. "Ms. Sterling helped with the research." A ghost of a smile touched Richard's lips. "Dinner, yes, that would be acceptable." After he left, Alexandra turned to Jack. Their fingers were still intertwined, fitting together like perfectly matched pieces of wood. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For teaching me that some things are worth fighting for." Emma hopped off her stool. "Does this mean we can stop pretending you're not in love with each other? Because Mrs. Rodriguez owes me $5. Jack and Alexandra stared at her, then at each other, and finally broke into laughter that held all the relief and joy and promise of new beginnings. And somewhere Jack thought Sarah was laughing too. The blueprint spread across Jack's workbench was unlike anything he'd drawn before. Alexandra leaned over his shoulder, her business acumen melding with his craftsmanship as they refined their vision. Morrison and Sterling, Workshop and Learning Center. "The community outreach program could start here," Alexandra said, pointing to a large open space. "Teaching woodworking to kids, especially those who've lost parents. Something sustainable, meaningful, like your grandmother's lessons." Jack nodded, sketching in another detail. "And this space could be for apprenticeships, real skills, fair wages." "Dad!" Emma burst through the door, waving a paper. "I got it! I got in!" She thrust the acceptance letter at them. The young craftsman's summer program they'd worried might be too advanced for her age. But Emma's project on sustainable forestry, combined with her practical experience in the workshop, had impressed the selection committee. "First one in my class," she beamed. "They said my understanding of wood properties was exceptional for my age." "That's my girl!" Jack swept her up in a hug, sawdust flying everywhere. Alexandra watched them with shining eyes. "We should celebrate. Special dinner. Can we have it here?" Emma asked. "In the workshop, like a picnic with Mom's picture?" Jack and Alexandra exchanged glances, sharing a smile. These workshop picnics had become their tradition over the past month, simple meals shared among the tools and projects that brought them together. "Perfect," Alexandra agreed. "I'll bring dessert from that bakery Sarah loved." As Emma ran off to tell Mrs. Rodriguez their plans, Jack turned back to the blueprints. "You know, when I first started this business, I never imagined a frozen lake would change everything." Alexandra finished, wrapping her arms around him from behind. That too. He traced the lines of their future on paper. But I meant this, building something bigger than furniture, something that helps people. Isn't that what you've always done? She gestured around the workshop. Every piece tells a story, remember? Now we're just helping more people tell theirs. The door chimed as their first afternoon student arrived, a teenage boy whose father had passed away last year. Jack had recognized the look in his eyes, that need to create something lasting. The scholarship program had been Alexandra's idea. Mr. Morrison, the boy stood awkwardly among the tools. I'm ready to learn, sir. Just Jack, he smiled, remembering his own first workshop lessons. Let's start with the basics. Feel the grain. Listen to what the wood wants to become. As he guided the boy through selecting his first piece of wood, Alexandra moved around the workshop, setting up for the afternoon. Senior class. Her corporate suits had given way to practical workshop wear, her expertise now extending beyond spreadsheets to saw blades. The blueprint caught the boy's eye. What's that going to be? A place where people can learn to build things, Jackie explained. Not just furniture, lives, communities. Like you and Miss Sterling. Jack looked at Alexandra, who was now explaining sustainable sourcing to an interested elderly couple. She caught his eye and smiled, that same smile that had first emerged through chattering teeth on a frozen lake. Yeah, he said softly, exactly like that. Later, after the students had left and Emma had fallen asleep surrounded by project sketches, Jack and Alexandra sat on his workbench, shoulders touching. Father called today, she said. The board unanimously approved our proposal. Said something about innovative community integration and positive brand alignment. Jack chuckled. That's corporate speak for you were right, isn't it? Coming from my father. It's practically a blessing. She leaned into him. The contractor can start next month. Soon this place will be full of people learning, creating, healing. It already is. He gestured to Emma's sleeping form, the student projects in various stages, the blueprint of their shared dream. You know, Sarah used to say, everything happens for a reason. Like falling through ice, like having someone brave enough to pull you out, in every way that matters. Alexandra turned to face him, sawdust in her hair and future in her eyes. I love you, she said simply. You and Emma, and this life we're building. Jack's answer was a kiss that tasted of wood shavings and possibility, of endings that became beginnings, of two worlds that found their perfect grain match in each other. Emma's family tree project for school looked nothing like the other kids' neat diagrams. Instead, she'd created an actual wooden tree, each branch carefully carved and connected. The base held photos of her parents, with Sarah's side branching, left and Jack's right. But it was the new branch she'd added that morning that made Jack pause. Alexandra's photo, connected to their family with a gracefully carved heart. It's for the holiday showcase, Emma explained, watching his reaction. Mrs. Peterson said we could interpret family however we wanted. I chose to show how love makes families grow. Jack touched the smooth wood, recognizing Alexandra's technique. In some of the carved details, they'd clearly worked on this together during their workshop sessions. The heart was my idea, Emma continued. But Miss Sterling showed me how to make it look like it's growing from the wood instead of just stuck on top. The workshop door opened, letting in a blast of December air, along with Alexandra and her parents. Victoria Sterling carried a covered dish, while Richard, still stiff but trying, held a bottle of wine. Emma! Victoria's face lit up. Is this your project? It's exquisite! Richard examined the carving with newfound appreciation. The joinery is remarkable for someone your age. Did your father teach you this technique? Dad and Ms. Sterling, Emma corrected proudly. We're having a whole section about different wood joining methods in the Learning Center when it opens. Victoria's eyes found the heart connecting Alexandra to their family branch. She touched it gently, then looked at her daughter with understanding. It's perfect, dear. The holiday dinner that followed was unlike anything Jack had imagined possible. 6 months ago, His small workshop had been transformed with twinkling lights and greenery. The long workbench, cleared of tools and projects, now held a feast that blended Sterling family traditions with Morrison simplicity. "Sarah would have loved this," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, setting down her famous tamales next to Victoria's. "Gourmet stuffing. All these people, all this love." Alexandra, wearing casual clothes but still managing to look elegant, moved through the space with comfortable familiarity. She knew where every tool belonged, which floorboards creaked, which chair was Emma's favorite. This was her home too now, in all the ways that mattered. "Before we eat," Richard cleared his throat, looking somewhat uncomfortable but determined, "I'd like to say something." He lifted his wine glass. "When Alexandra first told me she was leaving corporate law to help run a community workshop, I thought she'd lost her mind." "You weren't exactly subtle about it, Dad," Alexandra teased. "Yes, well..." He shifted, then straightened. "I was wrong. Watching you here, seeing what you and Jack are building, not just the center, but this family," he gestured to Emma's. "A wooden tree. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Your grandmother would be too." The room grew quiet, emotions running deep. Then Emma, practical as always, spoke up. "Does this mean you'll help teach the business classes at the center, Mr. Sterling? Because Ms. Sterling says you're really good at explaining complicated money stuff." Richard blinked, caught off guard. Well, I suppose I could." "Excellent." Victoria clapped her hands. "I'll sign up for the basic woodworking course. It's about time I learned what all these tools actually do." As their families merged over dinner, sharing stories and plans and laughter, Jack watched Alexandra showing her mother the proper way to hold a carving tool. She caught his eye and smiled. That same smile that had first thawed his frozen heart. On a winter lake, Emma's family tree stood in the corner, its carved branches catching the holiday lights. Someone had tied a small sprig of mistletoe to the heart, connecting Alexandra to their family. "That was Grandma Victoria's idea," Emma whispered, following his gaze. "She said some traditions are worth keeping." Later, after dessert had been served, and Richard had surprisingly agreed to 3 different teaching slots at the center, Alexandra found Jack by the tree. "Happy?" she asked, fitting herself against his side. He pulled her close, breathing in the now familiar mix of her expensive perfume and workshop sawdust. "Beyond happy. Though your father teaching business classes, that'll be interesting." "He's trying," she said softly. "We all are. That's what families do, right?" Emma's carved heart seemed to glow between their photos. "Right," Jack agreed, then nodded toward the mistletoe. "Your mother's subtle." Alexandra laughed. "About as subtle as our daughter's woodworking." Our daughter. The words fell naturally now, like perfectly fitted pieces of a family built by choice and love and second chances. The mistletoe didn't go to waste. The legal document landed on Jack's workbench like a bomb. Notice of investigation, business license review. Below that, allegations of code violations, safety concerns, and most damaging, questions about the ethical validity of his recent contracts. "It's Harrison." Alexandra's voice was tight with anger as she read over his shoulder. "He's been trying to block the learning center permits for weeks. Now he's going after your license." Jack knew Thomas Harrison, a competing furniture maker who'd lost several major contracts since Jack's business expanded. But this felt different, personal. "He's claiming preferential treatment," Alexandra continued, flipping through the pages. "Says our relationship influenced contract awards, that the Sterling name bought special favors." "Can he do that?" Emma asked from her perch on her stool. She'd refused to go to school today, insistent on staying close after seeing Jack's face when the papers arrived. "He can try." Alexandra's eyes hardened. "But he's forgetting who he's dealing with." Jack touched the document gently, as if it might bite. All their plans, the learning center, the community programs, their future, balanced on the edge of his business license. "We should delay the center's opening," he said quietly, "until this is cleared up." "No." Alexandra's response was immediate. "That's exactly what he wants. to make us look guilty, to stop what we're building here. Their first class of students was scheduled to start next week. 20 people, each with their own story, their own reason for needing this place. Jack thought of the teenage boy who'd been practicing for months, determined to learn his late father's craft. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Harrison had gone. To the press. The headline stung. Local business success story, built on romance with billionaire. Dad? Emma's voice was small. Are we going to lose the workshop? Before Jack could answer, the door chimed. Richard Sterling walked in, impeccable in his business suit, despite the sawdust. I came as soon as I heard, he said, surprising them all. Harrison's a fool if he thinks he can outmaneuver a Sterling. Daddy, Alexandra hadn't called him that since the day of her public statement. I've made mistakes, Richard acknowledged, trying to control your life, your choices. But this, he picked up the legal notice, this is someone trying to destroy something good, something real. He straightened his tie. No one does that to my family. The word family hung in the air, weighted with meaning. Emma slipped off. Her stool, and to everyone's surprise, hugged Richard around the waist. Does this mean you're going to help fix it, Grandpa? The title seemed to catch Richard off guard. He patted Emma's head awkwardly, but with genuine affection. Yes. Well, that's what family does, isn't it? More people arrived throughout the day. Victoria with her society connections, Mrs. Rodriguez rallying neighborhood support, former clients, eager to testify about Jack's integrity. The workshop became a war room, with Richard and Alexandra tag-teaming legal strategies while Jack tried to keep his hands busy with woodwork. Look at this, Alexandra said suddenly, examining Harrison's business records. 3 failed businesses in 5 years, each time blaming unfair competition. He's done this before, but never against someone with resources to fight back, Richard added, already on his phone with his legal team. Jack watched them work, this unlikely alliance of old money and working class, all focused on saving something bigger than themselves. Emma moved between groups, offering cookies and surprising insights, her wooden family tree standing proud. In the corner, Dad, she tugged his sleeve, remember what Mom said about storms? Jack smiled despite everything, that they show us what we're made of. And who stands with us? Emma finished. She looked around the crowded workshop. I think we're going to be okay. Alexandra appeared at his side, slipping her hand into his. More than okay. Harrison picked the wrong family to mess with. Looking at their joined hands, Jack remembered. Another crisis point, a frozen lake, a split-second decision, a life changed by choosing to help. Now here they all were, choosing again, standing together. The legal document still waited on his workbench, but somehow its threat seemed smaller against the strength of family, not by blood or name, but by choice and love, and the simple truth that some things were worth fighting for. So, Richard said, straightening his cuffs, shall we show Mr. Harrison exactly what happens when he threatens a Sterling Morrison enterprise? Emma grinned. Can I help? And in that moment, watching, his daughter plot strategy with her newfound grandfather, Jack knew they'd weather this storm too, together. The vindication letter arrived on the morning of the Learning Center's opening day. Jack read it aloud to his gathered family, his voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. Following a thorough investigation, the business license review, board finds no evidence of impropriety in the operations of Morrison Custom Furniture or its affiliated learning center. Furthermore, the board commends the establishment's commitment to community education and economic development. All allegations are hereby dismissed. Take that, Mr. Harrison! Emma pumped her fist, then quickly covered her mouth, remembering her grandmother Victoria's lessons about gracious victory. Alexandra smiled, squeezing Jack's hand. Read the best part. In light of evidence presented regarding Mr. Harrison's pattern of fraudulent complaints, his own business license will be subject to immediate review. Richard Sterling allowed himself a small smile. Amazing what a thorough background check can reveal. Harrison's former partners were quite eager to share their experiences once approached. Victoria touched her husband's arm. "And the community testimonials certainly didn't hurt. I've never seen such an outpouring of support." The Bayi workshop hummed with pre-opening activity. Students would arrive in an hour, their first official class. The space had been transformed, though Jack had insisted on keeping certain elements unchanged. His father's old tools still hung on the wall, next to the state-of-the-art equipment. Sarah's photo smiled down from its familiar spot, now joined by a picture of Alexandra's grandmother at her workbench. Mrs. Rodriguez bustled in with fresh coffee. "Channel 5 is outside again, but this time they want to cover the opening. Positive story." She winked at Emma. "Your idea about inviting Harrison's former clients to speak out was brilliant, Mika." Emma beamed. "I just remembered what Mom always said about truth being stronger than lies." Jack watched his daughter move through the workshop, confidently, checking that each student station was properly set up. At 9, she showed more business sense than he'd ever had. A perfect blend of Morrison craftsmanship and Sterling acumen. Alexandra followed his gaze. "She's amazing, isn't she? These past few weeks dealing with all this, she's been our rock." "She's had good examples," Jack replied, watching Richard earnestly explain profit margins to an interested Emma. "All of you standing with us. Standing with family," Alexandra corrected. She gestured to the vindication letter. "We should frame this, hang it next to my public statement from last month. A reminder that some things are worth fighting for." She smiled. "Speaking of which, our first student has arrived." Through the window, Jack saw the teenage boy who'd first inspired their teaching program, nervously approaching the door with his mother. Emma was already moving to greet them, practicing the welcome speech she'd been rehearsing all week. "Ready?" Alexandra squeezed his hand. Jack looked around the workshop, at Richard reviewing lesson plans, Victoria arranging welcome refreshments, Mrs. Rodriguez directing reporters to the designated media area, at Emma, growing more confident every day, at Alexandra, who had risked everything to stand by them. "More than ready," he answered. The door chimed and their first student entered. Emma stepped forward, every inch a Morrison Sterling as she began. "Welcome to our workshop. Here we believe every piece of wood has a story, and every person has the power to create something beautiful." Jack felt Alexandra's arm slip around his waist as they watched their daughter launch their shared dream. The vindication letter sat on his workbench, important but no longer crucial. They had already won something far more valuable than legal clearance. "You know," Alexandra whispered, "I think this is exactly what both our mothers would have wanted. And for us." As the workshop filled with eager students and supportive family, Jack knew she was right. Some victories weren't about proving others wrong, but about proving to yourself what was right all along. The morning sun streamed through the windows, catching the grain of Emma's wooden family tree, still displayed proudly in the corner. Heart connecting their branches seemed to glow, a reminder that the strongest bonds were built not from obligation or circumstance, but from choice and love, and the courage to stand together through any storm. The ring design sketch lay hidden in Jack's private workbench drawer, a labor of love, weeks in the making. Unlike traditional jewelry sketches, this one detailed an intricate wooden band with gold inlay, the wood carefully chosen from the maple that had once been part of Alexandra's grandmother's workbench. "It's perfect, Dad," Emma whispered, examining the design for the 100th time. They were alone in the workshop after hours, conspiring together. "The wave pattern looks just like the lake where you met." Jack ran his fingers over the sketch. "Your mom's ring was simple, just a gold band, all I could afford then. She loved it anyway." "Mom would want you to be happy," Emma said softly. "She'd love Ms. Sterling too, especially since she taught me that trick for fixing squeaky drawers." Victoria Sterling had proven an unexpected ally in his secret project, secretly providing a piece of her mother's workbench she'd saved. "For when you're ready," she'd said with a knowing smile. Even Richard had quietly offered his support, though he couldn't resist, adding, "At least this time I won't have to worry about merger potential." The workshop door opened, and they quickly hid the sketch. But it was just Mrs. Rodriguez carrying something carefully wrapped. "It's finished," she announced, unveiling a small velvet box. "My cousin's jeweler friend did exactly what you asked. The gold inlay is perfect." Jack opened the box with trembling fingers. The ring was everything he'd imagined: warm wood grains swirling like water, delicate gold catching the light like sun on ice. Inside, he'd had 2 dates engraved. The day of the rescue and Sarah's birthday. "Because love doesn't end," he explained to Emma's questioning look. "It just makes room for more." "When are you going to do it?" Emma bounced on her toes, excitement barely contained. "Tomorrow, at the lake." Jack smiled at his daughter's romantic sigh. "I thought we could all go ice fishing for old times." "Iseke, without the falling through the ice part, I hope," Mrs. Rodriguez teased. They had it all planned. Emma would suggest the fishing trip, making it seem spontaneous. Victoria would ensure Alexandra dressed warmly but elegantly, under the pretense of a photo shoot for the Learning Center's brochure. Richard had even arranged for the lake to be temporarily closed to other visitors, a fact Jack tried not to think too hard about. "Dad?" Emma's voice turned serious. "Are you nervous?" Jack looked at the ring, remembering another nervous proposal years ago. Another leap of faith. "Terrified," he admitted, "but the good kind of terrified. Like running across ice to save someone." Exactly like that. The next morning dawned clear and cold. Perfect ice fishing weather. Alexandra arrived at the workshop looking suspiciously well-dressed for fishing, but her smile was genuine when Emma suggested their expedition. "For old time's sake," she agreed, eyes twinkling as if she knew something was up. They drove to the lake in comfortable silence, Emma chattering about her latest woodworking project. The spot where they set up their gear had a clear view of where Alexandra had fallen through the ice nearly a year ago. "It feels different now," Alexandra mused, helping Emma arrange their equipment. "Coming back here, like the universe knew something we didn't." Jack touched the ring box in his pocket, heart pounding. Maybe it did. Emma suddenly became very interested in something in the distance. "Oh, look! Is that a bald eagle? I'm going to get a closer look." As their daughter tactfully retreated, Jack took Alexandra's hand. "Remember what you asked me that day? How do you repay someone who saves your life?" Alexandra turned to him, her eyes softening with understanding. "Jack," he pulled out the wooden box, opening it to reveal the ring. "You don't. You just spend the rest of your life showing them that it was worth saving." Tears froze on Alexandra's cheeks as she recognized the wood, traced the lake-like patterns with trembling fingers. "Is this your grandmother's workbench? And look inside." She read the dates, understanding immediately. More tears fell. "Oh, Jack, I love you," he said simply. "You and all the ways you've made our lives richer, not with money, but with love and understanding and the courage to build something new. Will you marry me?" Emma's whoop of joy from her not very distant eagle-watching spot made them both laugh through tears. "Yes," Alexandra whispered, "1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Jack caught a flash of movement across the lake, Victoria and Richard, trying and failing to be inconspicuous as they watched. Mrs. Rodriguez stood with them, not even pretending not to cry. Emma ran back, throwing herself into their embrace. "Does this mean I can finally call you Mom?" Alexandra held them both, the wooden ring catching sunlight like hope. "It means we're officially what we've been all along, a family." Above them, a real eagle soared past, as if nature itself was celebrating. Jack held his family close, feeling the rightness of everything, past and present, endings and beginnings, all flowing together like the grain in Alexandra's ring. Some love stories, he realized, weren't about saving someone once, but about choosing to save each other every day. That followed. The family portrait captured everything about their wedding day perfectly. Jack and Alexandra standing in the workshop-turned-chapel, Emma between them, all three of their hands resting on a piece of beautifully carved wood. But it was the smaller details that told the real story. Alexandra wearing Sarah's restored locket, Emma in a dress trimmed with wood-grain patterned fabric she'd helped design, Jack's boutonniere pinned to his suit with a tiny carpenter's level. 1 year later, that photo held pride of place in their expanded workshop, alongside Emma's family tree carving and the Learning Center's first graduation class picture. "Dad!" Emma's voice carried over the usual workshop sounds. Jason's group finished their first major project. Jack looked up from where he was teaching an advanced joinery class to see his daughter, now 10, and officially the center's youngest instructor, leading a group of beaming students. Their handcrafted pieces, each unique but showing the same careful attention to detail, stood displayed on workbenches. Beautiful work, he praised, recognizing techniques he'd taught mixed with innovations he hadn't. These students were making the craft their own, exactly as they'd hoped. Alexandra appeared from her office, where she'd been mentoring a young entrepreneur. Her wooden ring caught the light as she examined the students' work. "The grain matching is excellent. You've all been paying attention to Emma's lessons." The students straightened proudly. Emma had earned their respect, not through her connection to the founders, but through her genuine skill and passion for teaching. "Remember what my mom used to say," Emma told her students, sounding so much like Sarah it made Jack's heart catch. "Every piece of wood has a story. You just have to listen and help it tell that story." The workshop hummed with activity. Richard teaching a business class in one corner, Victoria helping with the community outreach program she'd started, Mrs. Rodriguez coordinating the expanding class schedule. What had started as a simple furniture workshop had grown into something none of them had imagined. "Jack?" Alexandra touched his arm. "The Carter family is here." He turned to see a familiar face, the teenage boy who'd first inspired their teaching program, now graduated and running his own small business. He'd brought his family to sign up his younger sister for classes. "Welcome back," Jack smiled, remembering another family's journey through grief toward hope. "Had to come?" Carter grinned. "Heard you're adding a new wing for advanced design. Studies. Thought maybe you could use another instructor?" Alexandra squeezed Jack's hand. "We're always growing. That's what families do." Later that evening, after the last student had left and Emma was doing her homework in her special workshop corner, Jack and Alexandra stood looking at their family portrait. "Happy?" she asked, echoing a question from their early days. "Beyond," he answered, watching Emma sketching designs for her next teaching project. "Though I still can't believe your father volunteers more hours here than at Sterling Technologies. He says it keeps him honest." Alexandra laughed. "Besides, I think he likes that Emma calls him Grandpa Woodworker now." They worked late, into the night, side by side, at their shared workbench, designing pieces for their upcoming anniversary collection. Each item would tell a story, of frozen lakes and second chances, of families built from love and choice, of simple moments that changed everything. Emma eventually fell asleep on her stool, her latest project plans clutched in her hands. As Jack carried her to the car, Alexandra gathered their daughter's drawings, furniture designs that somehow captured the best of both her mothers, both her families. "You know what Sarah would say about all this?" Alexandra asked softly as they drove home. Jack smiled, remembering, "That love builds the best furniture. That, and sometimes the strongest things we create aren't made of wood at all." He reached for her hand, feeling the smooth grain of her wooden ring. Above them, stars sparkled like ice crystals on a winter lake, reminding them of where their story began. But it was here, in these quiet moments of their built-together life, that the real magic lived. Emma stirred in the back seat. "Did I miss cleanup?" "Just rest, sweetheart," Alexandra said. "Tomorrow's another big day." "Every day's a big day," Emma mumbled sleepily, "when you're building something beautiful." Jack caught Alexandra's eye in the rearview mirror, sharing a smile. Their daughter had it right as usual. Every day was a chance to build something beautiful, Whether it was furniture, family, or a future, neither of them could have imagined that cold morning on the lake. After all, the best stories, like the best furniture, were built to last.